Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. It's feels like it's been so long, Stephen Scott.
I know, it's like we only talk every single day, but,
Yeah,
as far as the audience are concerned, you're never here.
I
But
don't
you're here now.
exist. I'm a
That's right.
figment of everybody's imagination.
That's
That's how
right.
this is going to work.
Just like our lovely Laura, right?
Yeah,
She turns
exactly.
up, no one
Mr.
knows who
F.
she is.
No one knows who anybody is
Who are these
anymore.
people, right? Listen, you've got your grubby little hands on the. No, what is it? What number are we up to on the Samsung Galaxy Fold line? Where are we up to now?
We are on the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold
Oh, Z Fold
7.
7.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I'm
My
holding it
favorite
up.
was 4.
I'm holding it up to the camera right now, which is almost impossible to see because it is ultimately thin, or incredibly thin, or amazingly thin, or insert expression here.
Incredibly thin, folded or unfolded?
Both, to be perfectly honest.
Mm.
Currently, it is in its folded state. I'm holding it sideways to the camera, so the profile is still thinner, a little bit thinner than a modern day iPhone, which is pretty cool. Not only that, Stephen Scott, but when you actually wake it, and I'm going to flip it the actual front folded, the screen is now a beautiful I think it's 6.5 inch diagonal screen. So it's a completely usable smartphone in your hand, one-handed, before you even go ahead and open the actual fold to display. And I'm going to do it right now. An 8-inch diagonal display. I know. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love when they talk to me. This is, you try to do demos and it never works because they just talk to you.
It is a
Um,
smartphone. I suppose that's kind of part of the deal, right? It will talk to you as it goes along.
Yeah, so I mean, Stephen, compared to other generations, now last year's Fold, which I guess was the 6, wasn't a really big leap forward from the previous generation. So this outer screen was whatever, inner screen was what it is, attractive as is. There was still a lot of issues with the hinge itself in terms of dust and even sand getting into it. People did throw it on the beach, but a lot of improvements across the board. The first thing, of course, you notice is it's strikingly thin. Like, I mean, if I had to try and describe this, to the blind low vision audience, basically it's the thickness of a USB-C connector. There is barely a millimeter of clearance on either side of the USB-C connector. If they were to go any thinner, Stephen, they would have to just go wireless charging.
It makes me think of the iMac when it came out and they had to put the headphone jack on the left side
Yeah.
because the iMac was so thin that you couldn't put a headphone jack into the back of the iMac. So it sounds kind of similar problem here. I think we're going to get to the point where these devices are going to go portless, right? Because there'll be no room left for the port.
Well, there's barely room for the USB charging port, and there's also barely room for the SIM card slot. I'm actually shocked there's actually even a SIM card slot in this, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, with
I thought we'd
eSIMs
go
now.
full eSIM. As of recording this, Stephen, they just announced Qi 5, I think it is, so 25-watt wireless charging. So that, I think, is going to make its way into a lot of these devices that we have in our hands, which is going to eliminate the need for these ports, I think, at the end of the day.
I mean, Android is something that you and I don't use as a daily driver. So
Oh, this is going to make me, I'm going to tell you, though.
you think
If,
so? You think you would
oh,
switch over for this?
if they let me keep this, which they're not, because I literally have to send it back after recording this segment here. This was my excuse to hang on to it a little bit longer.
Of course.
It is striking. It is strikingly thin, but it's super pocketable and super, manageable in your hand, with a great, rear camera and a front facing camera. This could make me do it again. You take out the ecosystem stuff and the things that we're tied to, like, the iMessage, FaceTime, and all that fun stuff. The ability to just kind of pop it open and get that bigger screen, for
Mm.
me, in my use case, where I use like portable mixers and some pretty interesting applications that are pretty good on an iPad, this eliminates the need for me to carry another device with me. I don't need to bring an iPad with me because I can actually do it all on this device. And they've gotten a little bit smart with the operating system as well, because it's not a tablet, and there are tablet optimized apps, and then there are phone optimized apps. Well, I use one called Mackie Master Fader for this Mackie mixer that I use. When I'm using it on the front of the screen, so same app on the actual device. When I use it on the front, it's in its mobile mode, so there's some limited restrictions on what I can do with it. When I open it up, it switches to the tablet mode, so it's not like a separate app that's required. I get the full functionality right there and then. Let alone the fact that you can do things like sit it on its side and type if you want to, and use the camera to have conversations, and of course,
Oh,
just
like the old Nokia communicators.
yeah, remember that? Oh, God, I
Yeah.
love that fun. I never got my hands on that one, unfortunately.
That was a
It
great
wasn't
one.
available here in Canada, but I'm super impressed. I'm honestly, Steven, I'm super impressed. There's still, a noticeable crease. When you're looking at it, when you're touching it, you'll notice that crease in the middle. They've done a much better job at the hinge, as I said earlier. It kind of is protected, and it's completely flush when you look at it sideways, and when you feel it sideways, it's completely flush. So there's no like weird angle, closing mechanism or anything.
That's right. There used to be a bit of a gap, wasn't there, where the hinge was?
Yeah, now it's gone. It's completely gone. So we're getting to a point, and it's funny because I read an article about Apple coming out with a folding phone, and the fact of the matter is that Apple does a really good job at letting other people make the mistakes, let other people throw these
Yes.
things at the wind and see what
Yep.
happens. I think we're getting to the point now. Like we're hearing rumors about a 2026 folding iPhone, maybe 2026, 27, because I think we're getting to the point now where these are really large contending devices. Quite honestly, I think, and I
Yeah.
hope to feel the same way about the Flip, which I'm hoping to get as well from them, because that one is as impressive, to be perfectly honest, in terms of the size, but also the screen real estate on the front, which was always the downside of these devices.
I remember a lot of things from the sort of visual past in my life. And I remember, for example, a video, I think it was a Kelly Rowland song back in the day, where she was using a Nokia communicator to send a text message via Microsoft Excel. Do check out that video if you've got any vision to check that out. It was a very amusing video. That just came to mind for some reason and I had to share it. But, the interesting thing for me is I find, for me, the Fold seems a kind of waste of a device on someone like me. But for someone who's got low vision, this would be amazing because the size of that screen, I think about magnification, large text,
Hmm.
being able to zoom in, all those things that, people with low vision do all the time, even not even necessarily using the accessibility functions, just actually being able to zoom in on an image, for example, one you've taken. I think about James Rath, the blind filmmaker, who, takes lots of video because, he loves taking videos. He can get up close with the
Yeah.
viewfinder and see all this stuff. Being able to use a screen like that to preview images, preview video, that kind of thing, that's really what it stands out, isn't it?
And I did play with a lot of those accessibility features like the magnification, and even for, someone who is sighted, like it is a very useful feature for anybody across the
Yeah.
board. And now with that extended screen real estate, you can zoom in more, you can zoom in larger, and you're also not zooming into the point that you don't know what what's around you on the actual screen. So it is very, very impressive. And of course, this is an Android device, so all those Android accessibility features that they constantly are updating, constantly announce, work right out of the box. There's no issue whatsoever on this device. The only differentiating point is that you've got more screen real estate to work with when you need it, if you need it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I'm holding out for the Flip because I think the Flip for me would be
Yeah.
more interesting. It's just a smaller device. I love the idea of the thin, slim device that I can put in my pocket and carry around, and then I've got a nice accessible smartphone when I open it up. I kind of wonder if we're at a point where, and as you say, there are rumors that Apple are going to come up with some kind of folding device next year, and if that's true, um, you know, I wonder how many of us will migrate to that because it seems obvious. I suppose. I think I guess I'm always thinking about it from my own perspective, but
Yeah.
from your perspective, as a user, do you think you would switch to a fold like this on an Apple Fold right away? Do you think that would be the way you would go, or would you
Right
go Flip,
away.
or
I
would
would
you?
buy
Yeah.
it right away, Steven. I would buy it
Wow.
right away to play with it 100%. As someone that doesn't use my iPad that often, like I use it when I need it. I use it for work. I use it
Mm.
for when I need it. I think I might start using a folding device a little bit more than I probably would have expected myself to, because again, it's not a separate device. If it's the same device and it's comfortable in my hand and it's as thin as this and it's as exciting in terms of the things I can do with it. And again, they'll have to differentiate between the iOS versions and the iPadOS versions and figure out how that ecosystem works. I think I'd probably be a pretty quick convert.
Yeah, and we know Apple are going to get it right. That's the bottom line, right? That's what they do,
100%.
right? So
Yeah.
we know that's going to be the case, and it might eat into the iPad market a little bit. I can think about the iPad Mini, for example,
Yeah.
being eaten into a bit by
Yeah.
this. It's a good,
Yeah.
because I mean, a lot of people still want to have that separate device, and I think if one thing I could get Apple to do would be to create individual family profiles for the iPad,
Yes,
that'd
you
be
think
really
that's
good.
coming. I think that's coming. Honestly, Steven, I think that's coming. It's something they didn't really announce with iOS 26 or iPadOS 26, but they're really pushing the limits of what that iPad can do in terms of pushing that functionality towards more of a computing device. And I think that profiles I mean, come on, I can do it on my Apple TV. Why can't I do that
I
on
can
my
do it by
iPad?
Kindle. You
Well,
know,
exactly, you
my
can do
Fire tablet.
yeah,
You know,
that's a
I
very
kind
good
of do.
point. Like, I should be
And
able to just it knows my Face ID, have
yep,
multiple people registered, just literally pick it up and it's
exactly.
mine.
That's right. And I mean, my Echo knows who's talking to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, why can't I pick up? I think a lot of people have an iPad at home that they leave on the table in the coffee table, you know, in the house. And, you know, it's maybe like
Yeah.
the family iPad. And, you know, you want to be able to log in. Of course, that can cause some interesting problems. If you get a text message from someone who, you know, Samantha's texted you again. Oh, dear. And so it goes. Never happened to me, by the way, just to be absolutely clear on that.
Mhm.
Don't know anyone by that name. But it's interesting to see. I mean, obviously, the other rumor is that they're going to bring out, and this is less of a rumor. This seems to be where we're going. That this year we're going to see an iPhone 17 Air.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is the new thing this year, is it? We're just going for thinner,
You
thinner,
think they're gonna
thinner.
call it the 17, or are we gonna start changing those numbers too?
Oh, who
It's gonna be the
knows?
iPhone 26.
That would actually be not a bad idea. Come to think of it, I often thought, why did they call it the iPhone 16e? Because they don't bring out a new iPhone
No, I don't
SE
know.
every year. They usually do it every couple of years. So why do that? Anyway, maybe we're going to move
It
on
would
to
be
having a
confusing though,
17e
wouldn't it
and
though? Like, I
18e.
have an iPhone 26 running iOS 27. What? Okay, now
That
we're
could
really just
change.
confusing the world. I think that we're really gonna push it over the top.
I think you're onto
Um,
something there.
Yeah, but I'm curious what the compromises would be then, right? What would the compromises be on a thinner device? Will there be
Mm.
compromises, or how do they mitigate that? Because I think that as us reviewers who we tend to get these devices to play with, what are they going to send us? Are they going to send us the Pro Maxes? Are they going to send us the Airs? What do they? And the reason I say what are they going to send us is because that tends to be what they want us to be talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So is that what they're going to want us to be talking about, or is it going to be just the regular kind of Pros and the Pro Maxes of the world? That's what I'm curious about.
Here's a question, and this kind of ties into both Apple and Samsung here. You know, one of the things that's rumored if the iPhone 17 Air comes to pass is that it may have a reduced battery inside, and it may be that there's
Yeah.
some software to kind of mitigate that. But what about the Samsung? How's the battery life on
Oh,
it?
it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. You've got
Right.
almost 24 hours of battery life in terms of video playback. It's quite impressive. And I think because of the fact that they've got two, I guess two sizes or two sides to deal with, they can have two batteries in here. So you're splitting up the battery power and you're able to have a larger
Mm.
capacity, even though it's spread over two batteries. So that's pretty impressive. Stephen, honestly, it is so thin. I cannot wait to see someone tear it down and maybe like jerry rig everything or something and rip it apart because I'm curious how small these components are, yet still being a flagship quality, speedy phone. Like at the end of the day, that's what is really interesting about it. There's no compromises anymore. There were compromises before. We had a slower processor, we had less battery life, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have those anymore. This is flagship feel in my hand. So I want to see how they fit all that stuff in there. And at some point, are we going to get to the point where we can't go smaller? I don't know. Is that possible?
Slip of paper in our hands. Yeah, that's how
But don't
small
forget
it's going
slip
to
of
get.
paper. You can only fold that. What is it? 7 times? You can't fold the paper more than 7 times.
Did they send you a watch? Because you get Samsung
They
Galaxy
did
Watch
send me.
8,
They
haven't they?
did send me the watch. I'm so used to. I'm so used to the Apple Watch.
Mm.
It's almost weird to have a round form factor of smartwatch. That being said, they've added a lot of the Galaxy features, the Surjet Gemini features on the watch itself, which is a great way to access those. Like if you know an Apple Watch in that ecosystem, I mean, we can barely use Siri on the phone, let alone on the watch itself. So
Yeah.
it is nice to see that. I think it still needs to come into its own, though, in terms of how that's going to evolve on the device. And that's a limit of battery power and computing power because that watch and all watches really are really limited in size and space in terms of what you can shove in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to. I've got the Watch 7, which I like, and I think it's
Yeah.
really nice. I think it's the Ultra I've got, and I really like it. It's a brilliant watch. Still some accessibility bugs along the way, and I've talked about that plenty. But it's still a gorgeous watch, still a great design. Samsung hardware is sexy. It's attractive. It's
Oh, yeah.
flagship. It does have a bit of a deviation in the way that it operates with Android, and even though Google and Samsung do work very closely together, I think the thing we're all kind of waiting for, though, this year from Samsung, we hope it's this year, and that Google partnership is glasses, because this is the next
Yeah.
thing. Or is it going to be a VR type headset? We just don't know.
Or will they just let other people do it until they're ready to do it? Like, do they need to put up another? This is the thing I find about all these companies is they seem to rush into these trends, but why you're straying from your focus, right? You're
Mm.
straying from what you do good. Like Meta is an interesting one because hardware for Meta is not it's not what they do, right? So they partner with the EssilorLuxotticas of the world, and that brings in the great relationships with Oakley and Meta, et cetera, and sorry, and Ray-Ban, so to speak. So it's like, I don't know. It seems like Apple, like, why would you do it? Samsung, why would, I know they're going to, they're all gonna do it, but why? Like, just let other people do it good and focus on what you do good, and make sure your stuff works well with those.
I think especially when it comes to glasses, you're talking fashion. It's a different thing. That's why their Meta Ray Bans, I think, were so
Yeah.
successful, because they had a name behind them that transcended tech. It had nothing really to do with tech. It was about fashion. And if Google
Yeah.
don't do the same thing, because I mean, look, we all know what happened with Google Glass. I speak to a lot of people who still have the Google Glass, but of course we know it now as Envision glasses in our world.
I
And
still have it set upstairs. I think I could sell it or
yeah,
something.
well, yeah, absolutely, you
Sell
could
it to
try.
Envision.
Yeah, they might need a couple. But the thing about it is, it was never a particularly sexy device.
No.
It was a pair of glasses, but it also wasn't a pair of glasses. So for a lot of people, it didn't really make the cut, made any sense. And of course, I think it was also way too early in its development for people to get their heads around. Nowadays,
Yeah.
everyone wants to take pictures. Everyone wants to take videos. Everyone wants to stream live. The facilities are there. The capability is there. And that is why it's kind of clicked at this point. What happens to Meta, though, once Google, and I think let's be fair, Google, Samsung first get into this game. I think we can expect something maybe later from Apple. But
Yeah.
right now, Google, Samsung, when they get into that space, what happens to Meta? What happens to the Meta Ray-Ban glasses? Do you think
They
they
have a head
fall off
start.
the edge?
They have a head start. This
Yeah,
tends to be
that's
the
true.
trend in this industry. If you've got the head start and you've got an established base and you're doing it right and you're listening to the feedback and you're adapting, which I think Meta is, they really are. I don't know. Yeah, you have sheer power in numbers in terms of iOS users and Android users, but Meta's an interesting case because they came out with one that works with everything. It works with everything. So it makes no difference if you're an Android user, an iPhone user. So what can Samsung do? What can they do? I guess here's the question. What can they do that is stand out absolutely better categorically that gives you absolutely no option to say, I gotta have that.
Mm.
I gotta have that. And a blind low vision user, I don't think that's going to come for a while. I think Meta, is doing a great job with Oakley, did make a great job with Ray-Ban. They're ahead of the pack, to be perfectly honest. So, can other people do they have better R&D? Sure, they've got great R&D, but
Use
are they willing to
cases,
take the risks?
use cases, and I think the demands of the user are very different from a blind person to a mainstream user. I think because the
Yes.
mainstream users are actually pretty well served with the functionality of the glasses. Probably not. I don't imagine you with your Meta Ray Bans are sitting there thinking, "Oh, I wish it did this," or "I wish it could do that." You've probably got a lot of the things you would want to do with it. I think.
I to be perfectly honest, I just enjoy the hands-free nature of being able to have the assistant take the
Yeah, that's
pictures.
it.
I don't stream online. I just want the hands-free nature. And I can get that with an earpiece, an earbud, I guess, but it just seems more natural with a pair of glasses. A pair of sunglasses, so to speak, as well, I know a lot of people, if I still wore a prescription, I would probably have them and I'd probably be wearing them more often and using them more often. But I like the idea of having an assistant at my disposal at all points in time. But
Mm.
even our assistants aren't quite there yet. They're not Jarvis, okay? They're just not Jarvis. Yeah.
Speaking of which, before I let you go, I have to ask you about this. So I pre-ordered a product called The Bee, which was
Yes.
this little wearable device
That was just bought, was it not?
well, that's the thing. So I got an
Ah.
email saying my order had been cancelled. I didn't cancel it. In fact, I got an email saying it was about to be shipped, and then an email saying it had been cancelled. And I thought, oh, that's strange. And then the next day I read it's been bought by Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. So I don't know if they're planning to subsume that into the Amazon Echo world or whether it's going to become its own thing like Ring or Blink.
Yeah, I wonder.
We'll need to wait and see. But the deal isn't finished yet. But the story goes that the people who work for that startup are being offered jobs within Amazon. So
Of
it
course,
sounds like
and they're going to
building it
adapt
in.
that somehow. They're going to create it into some kind of product. We're still waiting, though. We're still waiting for like Alexa Plus. Like, where is it? Like, where are
I know
these
what's going
features?
on.
And yeah, what's going on? So I think it's still anybody's game when it comes to that whole assistant world and really taking AI to the next level. I'm waiting for ChatGPT agents. That hasn't really come out here in Canada yet. I'm waiting
Mm.
to kind of see with that. I was playing with the Plod AI note pin.
Oh yeah.
Whatever. I returned it, to be perfectly honest. They've got something new coming out in, I think it's September. They haven't announced what, but I got an invitation to that event in September. So, and of course, what's going to come from this partnership with OpenAI and Johnny Ive, right? With this IO thing, that's
Yeah.
what everybody's kind of like. I think a lot of people are going to be in a holding pattern, going, well, I'm not going to spend my money just yet. Let's see what he has up his sleeves.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I must admit, that's the device I think everyone will want and then wish they hadn't bought. Because essentially you're just buying something, just listening to every word you're saying, and who knows what's going to be happening with that data. So I have a lot of questions around that. Just, one final thought on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
The Panos Panay, of course, left Microsoft to go to Amazon. Lots of talk around a signature line of Amazon products. Any rumors you're hearing about that and potentially anything?
Nothing hardcore, unfortunately, yet. I mean, we're still waiting. I mean, the latest news from Amazon World is the Kindle stuff. Nothing on the actual, like, Amazon, their own proprietary anything yet. Again, I think they need to kind of catch up on the whole Alexa Plus thing and see where that's going to go, and is that going to even be released anywhere? Like, is it problems? I remember it was hilarious. There was right after WWDC, they had the talk show with John Gruber there, and was it Joanna Stern that was on?
Yeah.
And she was saying, who in here has, and then one person had Alexa Plus, like one person in the audience.
Not good.
And this is like the tech world is there. So yeah, I think we're waiting to see what that is and to see how that kind of ties in to a signature line of products. But Panos Panay has a great track record, but it's been rather quiet.
It has been
on
quiet.
that
I mean,
front.
I think it does need to be a signature line, because if everyone's got, I mean, some people are still sitting there with third gen, second gen, original Echoes. They're not going to update them unless there's
They
a good
still work,
reason.
Stephen.
Well,
They
that's
still
it.
work,
They
right?
still work. So, you're going to have to sell quality audio. You're going to have to sell maybe even a partnership with another organization. Like we had that. I think they had a partnership with Sonos for a while. So they need more of that. Perhaps maybe it's a little bit like what Meta's done with fashion. Maybe they have to do with audio brands, but we shall see. Mark, always good to talk to you. Better send that phone back, or Samsung will be in touch.
They're going to come pick it up in any moment now.
Okay. Well,
Factory reset now.
catch you soon, Mark. Take care.